You exist. Congratulations. Now pay for it. Food, shelter, healthcare, coffee that costs more than your dignity. Everything you need to survive costs something. And somewhere, someone decided how much. Someone decided who gets what. Someone decided who goes without. That someone isn't a person. It's a system. An economic system is just the set of rules, written or not, that a society uses to answer three brutally simple questions. What do we produce? How do we produce it? And who gets it when it's done? Sounds easy. It is not easy. Humanity has been arguing about this for about 10,000 years, and we still haven't agreed. But we have tried a lot of things. Some worked, some didn't. Some worked for a while and then really catastrophically didn't. This is all of that. Your entire economics degree in 20 minutes. Let's go. Before we get into systems, we need to understand why systems exist at all. Stores are scarce. That's it. That's the whole reason economics exists as a field. If there were infinite food, infinite land, infinite oil, infinite time, we wouldn't need economists. We wouldn't need systems. We'd all just take what we want and go home. But there isn't infinite anything. There's a fixed amount of land, a fixed amount of oil, a fixed number of hours in a day. And there are a lot of people who want all of it. So society has to choose. And choosing means someone doesn't get what they want. And that, historically, makes people extremely angry. The three questions: what to produce, how to produce it, who gets it. These are called the fundamental economic problem. Every economic system is just a different answer to these three questions. And every answer comes with trade-offs. More efficiency, less equality, more equality, less efficiency, more freedom, more chaos, more control, less innovation. It's always a trade-off. There's no free lunch. That's not a metaphor. That's literally one of the most important principles in economics, TANSTAAFL. There ain't no such thing as a free lunch. Someone always pays. Okay, so what are the systems? Let's start at the beginning. Not the beginning of civilization. The beginning of economic thought. In a traditional economy, the three questions are answered by habit, by custom, by whatever your grandfather did, and his grandfather did, and his grandmother did before that. You're a farmer because your father was a farmer. You make shoes because your village makes shoes. You trade fish for grain because that's what your people have always traded fish for. No markets, no government planning, no GDP calculations, just tradition, just doing what was done before. This sounds ancient, because it is. But traditional economies didn't disappear. They still exist in parts of the world. Indigenous communities, isolated rural regions, subsistence farming societies. Anywhere the modern economy hasn't fully reached, you'll find elements of the traditional model still running. The upside: stability, predictability, cultural continuity. People know their role. There's a social fabric. Community is baked into the economic structure. The downside? It doesn't adapt. Technology changes the world and the traditional economy just doesn't care. Efficiency is not the goal. Survival is. And when something disrupts the tradition, a drought, a colonizer, a global supply chain, the whole thing can collapse because it was never built to handle the unexpected. Traditional economies are basically the economic version of not updating your operating system. Works fine until something new tries to run. Okay, tradition didn't scale, so someone had a different idea. What if one central authority just decided everything? Welcome to the command economy, also called a planned economy. Also called the thing that sounded great in theory and turned into breadlines in practice. In a command economy, the government answers all three questions. The government decides what gets produced. The government decides how it gets produced. The government decides who gets it and at what price. No markets, no supply and demand, no invisible hand. Just the visible fist of the state directing everything from the top down. The most famous example is the Soviet Union. Starting in 1917, the USSR built one of the most ambitious command economies in history. The state owned the factories, the farms, the banks, the transport, the housing. Central planners in Moscow wrote 5-year plans dictating exactly how much steel, wheat, and shoes the entire country would produce. And you know what? In some ways it worked. The USSR industrialized at a terrifying speed. In 30 years, they went from a largely agrarian peasant economy to a nuclear superpower. They put the first human in space. They built infrastructure across 11 time zones. But here's the problem. Central planning is really hard. Like, genuinely, computationally almost impossible. Think about how many products exist in a modern economy. Millions. Now think about how many factories, farms, workers, supply chains, and distribution networks exist to produce those products. Now think about how consumer preferences change every day based on weather, fashion, culture, and which influencer posted what. No planner can track all of that. No committee can respond fast enough. The information problem, first described by economist Friedrich Hayek, is fatal to command economies. Prices in a free market carry information. They tell producers what to make and how much. They tell consumers what things are worth. They coordinate millions of decisions automatically without anyone in charge. Take away prices and you're flying blind. So Soviet planners had problems. They overproduced things nobody wanted. They underproduced things everybody needed. Factories met their quotas by producing the wrong things. A nail factory given a quota by weight produced one giant useless nail. A shoe factory given a quota by number produced thousands of shoes in the wrong sizes. Not a metaphor. That actually happened. By the 1980s, the system was creaking. Shelves were empty. The black market was running the real economy. And in 1991, the whole thing collapsed. Command economies gave us one lesson above all others. Information is the lifeblood of an economy, and you can't fake it with bureaucracy. Enter the market economy, the thing most of the world runs on now, the thing economists love, the thing protesters hate, the thing that gave you your smartphone and your student debt simultaneously. In a market economy, the three questions are answered by prices, by supply and demand, by millions of individual decisions made by billions of individual people, each pursuing their own self-interest. Nobody is in charge. That's the point. Adam Smith, 18th century, Scottish, father of modern economics, excellent Whig, described this as the invisible hand. When you buy a coffee, you're not thinking about the Colombian farmer who grew the beans, the Dutch shipping company that transported them, or the Italian engineer who designed the espresso machine. You're just buying coffee, but your purchase sends a signal through the entire chain. Demand for coffee goes up, prices rise, farmers plant more, shipping companies expand, engineers innovate. Nobody coordinated this, nobody planned it. The market did it automatically through price signals. It's elegant, it's efficient, it rewards innovation, it punishes waste, it creates wealth at a scale no command economy has ever matched. And it also does some other things. It creates inequality. Because markets reward whoever brings the most value to the exchange, and starting positions are not equal. If you're born with capital, connections, and education, you can create enormous value. If you're born without any of those things, the market doesn't care. The market has no conscience. The market doesn't know your name. It creates monopolies. Because successful companies tend to grow, and growing companies tend to crush competition, and eventually you can end up with one or two companies controlling entire sectors of the economy. At which point the free market isn't particularly free anymore. It creates externalities. The factory that dumps chemicals in the river because clean disposal costs money. The coal plant that fills the air with carbon because the market price of coal doesn't include the future cost of climate change. The market is extraordinarily good at pricing things it can measure. It is terrible at pricing things it can't, like clean air, social stability, or the long-term future. Pure market economies don't really exist. Even the most capitalist countries in the world have laws, regulations, public services, central banks. Nobody actually runs a pure free market. But the market economy is the dominant model, and understanding it is understanding the world you live in. Here's the plot twist. Every real economy is a mix. The mixed economy is what happens when someone looks at pure capitalism and pure central planning and says, what if we took the good parts of both and tried really hard not to take the bad parts? The market handles most production. Private businesses compete. Prices emerge from supply and demand. Profit is the motive. Innovation happens, but the government intervenes where the market fails. Public goods, roads, national defense, basic research that the market won't provide because you can't charge people for them. Externalities, pollution, public health crises that the market ignores because the costs are invisible. Inequality, the market's tendency to concentrate wealth that the government addresses through taxation and redistribution. How much intervention? That's where it gets messy. That's where the politics lives. That's where every election is actually being fought. Scan across the world's major economies. The United States is a mixed economy tilted toward markets. High levels of private enterprise, relatively low taxes by developed world standards, less public provision of healthcare and housing than its peers. The results? Enormous innovation, enormous wealth generation, also enormous inequality, also the most expensive healthcare system in the world with outcomes that rank well below what it should achieve for the money spent. Scandinavian countries, Sweden, Denmark, Norway are mixed economies tilted toward redistribution, high taxes, strong public services, universal healthcare, heavily subsidized education, generous unemployment benefits. The result? High equality, high happiness scores, high quality of life across income levels. The trade-off is less dynamism, fewer billion-dollar startups, more predictability. Germany sits somewhere in between. The social market economy, a model that explicitly embraces the market but pairs it with strong worker protections, co-determination, and a robust social safety net. Strong industrial base, lower inequality than the US, strong unions that sit on company boards. China is its own category, officially still a socialist state. In practice, a hybrid system where the Communist Party directs strategic sectors and state-owned enterprises control key industries, while a massive private sector, Alibaba, Tencent, Huawei, operates under market conditions as long as it doesn't threaten the party's political control. Economists sometimes call China state capitalism. It's capitalism with the state as the biggest capitalist. It's produced the greatest economic rise in human history, lifting hundreds of millions out of poverty in a single generation, while also producing the political repression, surveillance infrastructure, and territorial aggression that goes with unchecked central power. No system is clean. All systems are compromises. You can't understand economic systems without understanding the ideologies underneath them. The systems aren't just technical choices, they're moral positions about human nature. Capitalism says, humans are self-interested. That's not a flaw, that's a feature. Harness self-interest through markets and you get prosperity. Give people property rights and the freedom to trade and they'll create value because it benefits them to do so. The rising tide lifts all boats. Socialism says, humans are social. We're not just competing, we're cooperating. Markets concentrate power and wealth. The means of production, factories, resources, technology, should be owned collectively, either by the state or by workers themselves. Profit is surplus value extracted from workers who never fully receive what their labor is worth. Communism, the full Marxist version, says the state itself is temporary. In true communism, there is no state, there's no private property. People contribute according to their ability and receive according to their need. The socialist state is just the transition phase. No fully communist economy has ever existed. Every country that called itself communist, the USSR, Maoist China, Cuba, North Korea, was actually a command economy with a single-party state. Which is why Marxists and communists will tell you those countries weren't real communism. And technically, they're right. And practically, every attempt to move toward it produced authoritarian outcomes, which is a problem you have to reckon with regardless of the theory. Keynesianism, not an ideology exactly, more a school of thought, says the market is mostly good but unstable. It goes through boom and bust cycles. During busts, private demand collapses. Businesses stop investing. People stop spending. The economy can get stuck in a low equilibrium. Government should step in and spend infrastructure, public programs, stimulus to restart demand. Then pull back during booms. This is the theoretical basis for most fiscal policy today. Most governments, regardless of political orientation, do some version of Keynesian countercyclical spending. Neoliberalism, the dominant economic ideology of the 1980s through the 2010s, says deregulate, privatize, open trade, reduce government spending, and trust markets to allocate resources efficiently. Thatcher in Britain, Reagan in the United States. The Washington Consensus exported to developing countries with a mix of genuinely useful reforms and genuinely damaging structural adjustments. Neoliberalism lifted global trade enormously. It also contributed to the hollowing out of industrial working classes in Western countries, rising inequality within nations even as inequality between nations fell, and a political backlash that's still playing out. The 2008 financial crisis was a stress test for neoliberal ideas. Markets didn't self-correct. They collapsed. Governments had to bail them out. Since then, the intellectual consensus has shifted. More support for regulation, for redistribution, for industrial policy. Less faith that markets solve everything automatically. Here's the part they don't spend enough time on in undergraduate degrees. Economic systems exist to generate prosperity. But what actually causes prosperity? Capital, physical capital, machines, factories, infrastructure, increases what workers can produce. Financial capital, investment, allows capital to be built. Human capital, education, skills, health, determines how productively workers use physical capital, technology. Productivity growth, making more with the same inputs, is the only way living standards improve over the long run. Technological progress is the engine, it compounds. A 1% improvement in productivity per year, sustained for a century, is transformative. Institutions. Property rights that are actually enforced. Contract law that functions. A legal system that applies to everyone, including the powerful. Corruption is not just morally bad, it's economically devastating. It raises the cost of doing business. It misallocates resources. Countries with strong institutions grow. Countries without them don't trade. Comparative advantage. The idea that countries benefit from specializing in what they produce relatively efficiently and trading for the rest is one of the most counterintuitive and robust findings in economics. Even a country that's worse than everyone else at producing everything can still benefit from trade. You don't have to be the best. You have to be the best at your best thing: stability. Hyperinflation destroys savings. Civil conflicts destroys capital. Political uncertainty destroys investment. The countries that have grown fastest have generally done so during periods of political stability, even when that stability came with authoritarian governments. It's an uncomfortable fact that development economists don't fully know what to do with. Here's the thing they don't tell you until very late in the degree: economics doesn't have answers. It has frameworks. The market is efficient in theory. In practice, it has failures. Command economies can mobilize resources at scale. In practice, they destroy information. Mixed economies split the difference. In practice, the political process that determines the mix is itself subject to capture by whoever has the most money or power. Every economic system is a tool, and every tool can be used well or badly, honestly or corruptly, for the many or for the few. The economy isn't a machine that runs on its own. It's a social institution. It reflects the values, the power structures, and the choices of the society running it. Change the society, and the economy changes. Change the economy, and the society changes. That's why economics is never just economics. It's always also politics, history, culture, and power. You can know all the models, all the equations, all the theories from Smith to Keynes to Hayek to Piketty, and you'll still find that the hardest question in economics isn't analytical, it's moral. Who should get what? Who decides? And who bears the cost when the system gets it wrong? That question doesn't have an equation, it has a conversation. A long, ongoing, unfinished conversation that every generation has to have for themselves. And now you're part of it.